Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the Rules Committee. This afternoon, the Rules Committee will consider H.R. 4596, the Small Business Broadband Deployment Act, and H.R. 3797, the Satisfying Energy Needs and Saving the Environment Act. As part of the Federal Communication Commission's Open Internet Order, the FCC adopted enhancements to the 2010 disclosure requirements for Internet service providers. Recognizing the burden that these enhanced disclosures could place on small businesses, the FCC temporarily exempted small ISPs with 100,000 or fewer subscribers from these disclosures. Shortly before the December 2015 expiration of the temporary exemption, the FCC extended the exemption until December 2016. H.R. 4596 ensures that small business providers of broadband internet service can devote resources to broadband deployment rather than to compliance with burdensome regulatory requirements. Specifically, this legislation exempts ISPs with 250,000 subscribers or fewer from the enhanced transparency requirements required under the 2015 Open Internet Order for 5 years. We will also consider today H.R. 3797. This bill ensures innovative and environmentally beneficial facilities that use coal refuse as fuel can continue to operate and will not be forced to shut down due to unachievable requirements from the EPA. To date, coal refuse to energy approach has been used to reclaim thousands of acres of previously damaged land and streams, saving taxpayers millions of dollars in potential cleanup costs. This legislation ensures that the private sector can continue to lead the way on environmental cleanup while simultaneously creating thousands of jobs and generating cheap electricity. We have three experts on these issues with us today. I'd invite you all to join us at the table. Congressman Bob Latta, Congressman Frank Pallone, and Congressman Keith Rothfuss. Without objection, anything that you have in writing, you can submit and will be printed in the record. And we welcome your opening oral statement, Mr. Latta.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thanks very much for having us today to speak on H.R. 4596, which again is the Small Business Broadband Deployment Act. This legislation was drafted with the intention of putting small businesses and consumers first. And I'm proud our committee achieved bipartisan support for this common sense proposal. And you've mentioned some of the information a little bit earlier about the bill. If I could repeat a little bit of it. The FCC's 2015 Open Internet Order included enhanced transparency requirements for broadband internet access service providers, requiring disclosure of technical performance characteristics like packet loss. Recognize the burden that these enhanced disclosures could place on small businesses. The Commission temporarily exempted small ISPs with 100,000 or fewer subscribers from these disclosures and began a proceeding to determine how to address the exemption going forward. In November, Republican members on the Subcommittee on Communications and Technology and Republican members on the Small Business Committee wrote the FCC urging Chairman Wheeler to make the exemption permanent and to raise the threshold to 500,000 subscribers or fewer, the number used by the FCC in the past, or 1,500 or fewer employees, the definition adopted by the SBA. In addition, there were also overwhelming support for the permanent exemption in the FCC's public proceedings. In fact, only one commenter opposed it. Unfortunately, the FCC chose to only extend the exemption for an additional year and kept its threshold at 100,000 or fewer subscribers. In response, Chairman Walden released a discussion draft for the Small Business Broadband Deployment Act, which put into law the requests we made of the Commission in our letter. We held a legislative hearing where witnesses included the president of a small wireless internet service provider and discussed the myriad of challenges that small businesses face with yet another challenging regulatory requirement. One of the most compelling points to come out of that hearing was that witness sharing with the subcommittee, or the full committee, the impact of these increased reporting burdens would have on her business, forcing her to make the decision between improving and expanding her network or complying with confusing and costly regulations. Following that hearing, we began to work with our Democrat members of our subcommittee to try and find common ground on the bill. While there is broad consensus on some of the principles of the legislation, we were unable to come to agreement before our subcommittee markup. One of the problems that was raised by the minority was the lack of data on small ISPs and how many fall below the various thresholds and how many subscribers they serve. With this concern in mind, we continue moving forward with the negotiations following the passage of the discussion draft by voice vote on the subcommittee level. Thanks to extensive and comprehensive negotiation between our staffs, I'm pleased that we were able to reach an agreement before the full committee vote later that month. H.R. 4596, as amended, will extend the exemption for ISPs with fewer than 250,000 subscribers for 5 years. It requires the FCC to submit a report to Congress with recommendations of the Commission regarding whether or not the exemption should be made permanent and whether the definition of the term small business should be modified. Our intent is that the FCC report, which requires data to support our recommendations, will help to address any concerns about a lack of adequate information on which to base the threshold. H.R. 4596 takes the initial action by the FCC and goes a step further by providing regulatory certainty for small band providers for the next 5 years with an opportunity for the exemption to become reviewed and potentially made permanent. Rather than focusing time and resources navigating the cumbersome rules, small ISPs will be able to better allocate their efforts to providing service to their customers, particularly those living in areas not served by other providers. By increasing the threshold for the definition of a small business, we're bringing it closer in line with some of the Commission's previous definitions that were blessed by the SBA. Additionally, all of the ISPs are still subject to the 2010 transparency rules, meaning customers are still provided with all of the information about their service they have come to expect. We think that this will result in a win for small business and, importantly, a win for consumers who will get a better and faster broadband service as their providers stay focused on improving networks. This bill is the result of good faith bipartisan negotiations, and we'd like to thank Congressman Loebsack and his staff for working with us on this bill. I believe that the thorough consideration that surrounded this bill led to a product we can all be proud of to support. H.R. 4596 will help protect these vital small providers who serve folks around the country, including those in so many of our own districts, who may otherwise not have the robust internet service that small ISPs provide. And I would ask the Rules Committee to take favorable action on it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the gentleman from Ohio. Mr. Pallone, if you'd forgive me just one moment, I had 3 responsibilities. One was to gavel the committee open. The second was to welcome you all to the table. The third was to yield to the ranking member from Florida. So I apologize, Mr. Hayes. I was just giddy to be here, as I know you are too, and missed that. In lieu of that, the ranking member from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you. Obviously, the bill that my colleague from Ohio mentioned is a bipartisan agreement consensus bill that we worked out. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that one, but I do want to mention that I guess the thing that I really wanted to stress, Mr. Chairman, is that since we did work this out, as reported, I would caution against any amendments to modify the language or to insert extraneous FCC-related policy decisions, because we have a compromise here that, obviously if you change it significantly, that compromise would break down. I don't want to talk too much about the original bill. I mean, Democrats had significant concerns with the original bill because it increased the exempted entities beyond what we would consider small businesses. But we do agree with the FCC's transparency rule that consumers deserve to know what they're buying when they pay their monthly broadband bill, and at the same time, we understand that there may be burdens for smaller service providers. So our goal was to try to find an appropriate balance that provides relief for small service providers while minimizing the impact on consumers. And we do appreciate the Republicans working with us to come to an agreement on the revised language. As was mentioned by Mr. Latta, Congressman Loebsack took the lead on the Democratic side, and we believe that his work with Chairman Walden produced a fair balance between these different interests. The reported legislation significantly cuts back the exemption threshold to providers with 250,000 or fewer subscribers, and it sunsets the exemption in 5 years, which is important because it provides the FCC with time to report its data to Congress, and this information will be essential in helping Congress decide whether to continue the exemption or to modify the threshold. So again, we support the bill as reported, and again, hope that there would be no amendments or any extraneous FCC policy decisions, but this is a consensus bill. I assume you want me to talk about the second one, right?
Please.
Okay. That is not the case with regard to the second bill, H.R. 3797 or the 97 or the Sense Act. In my opinion, this is another in a string of unnecessary bills related to the Clean Air Act to come out of the Energy and Commerce Committee. This time, the majority is taking aim at two of the most important Clean Air Act rules for protecting public health from toxic air pollutants like mercury and sulfur dioxide. If the Sense Act were to become law, power plants that use waste coal would be given special breaks under the EPA's Cross-State Air Pollution Rule, or CSAPR rule, and the Mercury and Air Toxic Standards, or MATS rule. And I did not hear, Mr. Chairman, any justification for this legislation during the course of the Energy and Commerce Committee's consideration of the bill. Instead, I heard that the Sense Act puts major coal-firing plants at a disadvantage relative to waste coal plants, that it undermines states' authorities to develop appropriate strategies for complying with EPA's rules tailored to the specific needs within their state. And I also heard it undercuts the proven market-based approach of using emission credits to achieve improved air quality at the lowest cost. So all of this is being done under this Sense Act to benefit the approximately 20 waste coal plants that exist in a handful of states, mostly in Pennsylvania. Ironically, if Pennsylvania wanted to help these plants out under the CSAPR rule, they could have. So far, they have not, but that doesn't stop the state from doing something in the future. It's entirely within its rights under the CSAPR rule for the states to take action. As for the bill's changes to the MATS rule, that's the mercury provision, EPA and the courts have reviewed and rejected the argument for special consideration of waste coal plants under the rule. Waste coal plants are no different than other coal plants and should be held to the same emission standards. So basically, we're opposed to this, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, because it really guts important provisions of the Clean Air Act with regard to CSAPR. We don't think it's necessary because the states have flexibility. With regard to mercury, we think that waste coal plants should be treated the same as other coal plants, and there's no reason to have special consideration for these waste coal plants under the rule. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. We'll recognize the sponsor, the author of H.R. 3797, Mr. Rothfuss from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Acting Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss a rule for H.R. 3797, the Sense Act. This bill would help ensure the continued operation of environmentally beneficial coal refuse to energy plants. Coal refuse, the above-ground waste product of coal mining, is a serious environmental problem in many coal mining regions. These massive piles of material contribute to acid mine drainage that pollutes thousands of miles of rivers and streams in coal country. They can also spontaneously combust, causing fires that are heavily polluting, dangerous, and burn for long periods. Remediation of coal refuse is expensive, estimated at $2 billion for Pennsylvania alone. Fortunately, a cost-effective solution has emerged that has had great success in restoring the environment. Coal refuse to energy plants have been developed that recycle coal refuse to produce electricity. The resultant ash is environmentally benign and is used for remediation of the land. There are 19 of these plants in operation that are creating energy and jobs while addressing the coal refuse problem at no additional cost to the taxpayer. Thus far, over 200 million tons of coal refuse has been eliminated by these facilities and thousands of contaminated acres restored. One might think the EPA would strongly support the coal refuse to energy industry because it has been so effective in restoring environments in historic coal mining communities to their original state. However, the EPA has promulgated two rules, the Cross-State Air Pollution Rule and Mercury and Air Toxic Standards, that treat these plants no differently from most other coal-fired power plants, despite the unique characteristics of their fuel source and means of operation. As a result of these rules, many coal refuse to energy facilities will have to shut their doors, depriving the communities they serve of jobs, electricity, and a solution to the coal refuse problem. My state has even witnessed layoffs in the last few weeks. That is where the Sense Act comes in. It makes minor changes to the CSAPR, or the Cross-State Air Pollution Rule, and MATS rules so that coal refuse to energy plants can remain viable. The bill still requires these plants to reduce their emissions, but does so in a manner that is reasonable and achievable for them. The Sense Act is a common-sense, pro-environment bill that preserves both the economic and environmental benefits provided by coal refuse to energy plants and is worthy of support. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Pallone, thinking about the administration's efforts at cap-and-trade proposals in the past, seems like that's exactly what Mr. Rothfuss's bill would accomplish, that we have a real societal need that's being achieved by cleaning up these sites using this refuse coal. And under a cap-and-trade proposal, you would just be able to buy those credits elsewhere in order to accomplish both the environmental goals of the EPA as well as the community goals of cleaning up a site. Are you inherently opposed to the goal that the bill seeks, which is to consume this refuse product, or is there a pathway forward, as you have found a pathway forward on the other bill we're looking at today?
Well, I think the problem, Mr. Chairman, is you're describing what the current law is, and the Sense Act would change it. Because under the current law, the state does have the flexibility. They can decide what kind of credits they want to trade. But what the Sense Act does is to basically declare winners and losers. So essentially, if it alters the trading system by reserving emission credits for waste coal units that can't be traded. And that doesn't allow the states to have the flexibility that you described. So I think what you're describing is the current law, not what the Sense Act does. It eliminates that flexibility and picks winners and losers, the winners being the waste coal plants. We think they should be, that decision should be up to the states, which it is now.
Mr. Rothfuss, so many of these decisions are some of the conversations we have are just intellectual conversations. You're talking about real people and real jobs, already folks being impacted. What's the answer?
Real people and real jobs, and the state would still require the EPA's approval for anything it wants to do, and that could take up to 2 years. In the meantime, we have these facilities that are threatening with shutting down that have been improving the environment. And what the Sense Act does is what the EPA itself should have done. Both the Clean Air Act and the EPA regulations promulgated under it routinely divide regulated entities into separate categories that are treated differently based on their unique characteristics, and that's the case here.
And I would maintain, Mr. Chairman, that decision should be left up to the states, and it shouldn't be the law or the statute that says which ones are given preference between the waste and the regular coal plants.
Mr. Ladd, I'm reading from a Statement of Administration policy on H.R. 4596, the Small Business Broadband Deployment Act. And it says the administration does not oppose House passage of H.R. 4596 in its current form. However, the administration will not support any attempt to undermine the important consumer economic protections of the Open Internet Order, and the administration looks forward to continued conversations with the Congress to ensure a free and open Internet. From the committee's perspective, is H.R. 4596 the final word in this conversation, this carefully crafted compromise, or are there ongoing administration conversations that the committee
Well, right,
sees?
and again, Mr. Chairman, as I said, that this came about for a couple of reasons. One, again, when with the FCC, what they came out with and going with the 100,000, because again, I was contacted by small ISPs in my district. And I'm sure a lot of other members on the committee were too, and folks that have these folks in their district. And to have all these regulations coming down on them when you're a very small business, and again, as the one person that testified before us, she stated that the problem is that, all of a sudden you're going to be putting more time on the regulatory side instead of helping the consumer and getting things out there. And so, again, what the committee did, and especially with the bipartisanship that we had working through the piece of legislation, we came up with the 250,000 in a 5-year. And at the same time, that all the ISPs are going to still be subject to the 2010 transparency rules. That means the customers, the consumers out there are still going to be provided with all the information about the service that they're going to that they want and expect to receive. So, this is, we're doing this legislatively to make sure that people know exactly what you're going to get, especially folks back home that are going to be providing these services with those 250,000 and down, because again, otherwise, We just know with $1.88 trillion worth of regulations out there on the folks across the country, a lot of folks are just drowning in paperwork, and that's what we don't want to have happen here.
I thank the gentleman. Gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Collins.
What we really just see here many times is just a dedication to the people that we represent. The bigger picture affects our country worldwide, but when you get down to just your districts and focusing on the districts and the things that affect, it brings real people to real life, and I want to appreciate you bringing this. And the broadband issue, from our perspective, I know in Northeast Georgia and other places, is something that we're very interested in. So both these pieces of legislation are worthy of bringing forward, and I look forward to voting for them.
Thank the gentleman. Gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Chairman, I thank all of our presenters. You read from the statement of the administration, so I won't read further, but I ask unanimous consent on H.R. 4596 that the administration or policy be placed into the record.
Without objection.
And additionally, Mr. Chairman, H.R. 3795 or 97, just one sentence, if the president were presented, his senior advisors would recommend that he veto the bill. There's a whole lot of substance, but I think Mr. Pallone has presented pretty much the ideas that the administration supports. And toward that end, I would ask unanimous consent that this be made a part of the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Gentleman from Colorado. I thank our witnesses for being here, and this concludes the hearing portion for H.R. 3797, H.R. 4596. Thank you all. If you will please leave any written statements you have for the stenographer, we'll make sure those get included. Given the aggressive work of the committee today, I'm told that we will be in recess until 5 p.m. is a target date.
Rules Committee come to order. Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity for the hearing today, and I thank Mr. Woodall for being here in my stead. We're all rearranging our times today, and the chair now being receipt of a motion from the gentleman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee grant H.R. 4596, Small Business Broadband Deployment Act, a structured rule. The rule provides 1 hour debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule provides that the amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committee on Energy and Commerce, now printed in the bill, shall be considered as adopted, and the bill as amended shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against provisions in the bill as amended. The rule makes an order only the further amendment printed in Part A of the Rules Committee report, if offered by the member designated in the report. The amendment shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. The rule waives all points of order against the amendment printed in Part A of the report. The rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions. Section 2 of the rule provides for consideration of H.R. 3797, the Sense Act. Under a structured rule, the rule provides 1 hour general debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule provides that the bill shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against provisions in the bill. The rule makes an order only those amendments printed in Part B of the Rules Committee report. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. The rule waives all points of order against the amendments printed in Part B of the report. Finally, the rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
Thank you, gentlemen, for a motion. I would extend myself just one moment. The rule provides for consideration of both bills under structured rules. In the case of the broadband bill, we made an order all submitted amendments. With respect to the Sense Act, the rule makes an order all submitted amendments except one which was received after the hearing was closed. I think it's pretty straightforward. I appreciate the members hearing the motion. We're now open for amendment or discussion.
Thank you, Mr.
Gentlewoman's
Chairman.
recognized.
I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee grant H.R. 3797 and H.R. 4596, each an open rule, so that all members have the opportunity to offer amendments to the bills on the floor.
Thank you very much. Further discussion. Vote will now be on the slaughter amendment. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. No. Those have it,
Roll
noes
call,
have it.
please.
Gentlewoman asks for a roll call vote.
Ms. Fox? No. Ms. Fox? No. Mr. Cole? Mr. Woodall? No. Mr. Woodall, no. Mr. Burgess? Mr. Burgess, no. Mr. Stivers? Mr. Stivers, no. Mr. Collins? Mr. Byrne? No. Mr. Byrne, no. Mr. Newhouse? Ms. Slaughter?
Aye.
Ms. Slaughter, aye. Mr. McGovern? Aye. Mr. McGovern, aye. Mr. Hastings? Aye. Mr. Hastings, aye. Mr. Polis? Aye. Mr. Polis, aye. Mr. Chairman?
No. No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 6 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to, not agreed to. Further amendment or discussion? Seeing none, the vote will now be on the motion from the gentlewoman from North Carolina. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The ayes have it, the ayes have it.
And let's have a roll call vote on that.
Gentlewoman asks for a roll call vote.
Ms. Fox? Aye. Ms. Fox? Aye. Mr. Cole? Mr. Woodall? Aye. Mr. Woodall, aye. Mr. Burgess? Mr. Burgess, aye. Mr. Stivers? Aye. Mr. Stivers, aye. Mr. Collins? Mr. Byrne? Aye. Mr. Byrne, aye. Mr. Newhouse? Ms. Slaughter?
No.
Ms. Slaughter, no. Mr. McGovern? No. Mr. McGovern, no. Mr. Hastings? No. Mr. Hastings, no. Mr. Polis? No. Mr. Polis, no. Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, aye.
Clerk will report the total.
6 yeas, 4 nays.
Motion is agreed to. Motion is agreed to. The gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Stivers, will be handling this for Republicans.
And Mr. Polis for the Democrats.
And Mr. Poles for Democrats. I need to admit that I did not do what I said I would do.
That's right.
Well, it's not done yet. You don't know that. Today's supposed to be Pi Day. I ended up having to
Let
Go.
me confess I did the same
Okay.
promised everybody I'd bring some chocolate candy, and I didn't get to the store, but I will do it.
I had to make a flight on Sunday to Houston and back on Sunday, and I did not have time, and I did not keep them in my truck because it was too warm in my truck, and I didn't want them to be bad. So
It's probably better for both of us, wouldn't it?
next week is birthday week for your friend right here, so I'll bring the birthday cake then.
That's only fair, you bring your own cake.
There you, and eat it too.
Okay.
And eat it too. So I want you to know, I did recognize that I did not do what I said I'd do, and I admitted it.
And we'll be meeting tomorrow.
And I would anticipate that our next meeting will be on Wednesday.
Wednesday, okay.
Today is Monday, so we're going to meet on Wednesday. Consider original jurisdiction resolution authorizing the Speaker to file amicus brief. Thank you very much, and we appreciate our awesome stenographer. This now finishes our work for the day. Take 30 seconds and